I want to start with something that I think people don't know about you.
Okay.
Which is that, not that many people know about you, which is that you've actually been at OpenAI longer than Sam Altman, the CEO and co-founder of OpenAI. And you both came from Y Combinator, this famous startup accelerator. So I was just curious, after 10 years, what of Y Combinator is in the DNA of OpenAI?
Yeah, well, not many people know this. I hired Sam, actually. Just kidding. But it's interesting, actually, to see kind of the YC DNA that is infused in OpenAI. Our chief strategy officer, also Jason Kwan, came from Y Combinator. And if you really think about what AI is at its core, right, it really is this entirely new foundation. It's this new kind of platform of technology. And that means that there's a lot of things that are going to get built. And so if YC was kind of the expression of all the things that kind of could have gotten built in the kind of software 2.0 era of technology, OpenAI, I think, is kind of the platform in which a lot of new things will get built in the AI era. And we take a venture mindset as much as we can to how we think about what it is that we do. We try and let a lot of things, a lot of flowers bloom. We try and run a lot of experiments. We have kind of a research mindset in that sense. People don't know actually why OpenAI started as a YC research project way back when. And I think we're trying to be unconstrained kind of in our thinking and really focus on like, if this really works, right? If it goes well, what kind of upside is there for us? And so you have to have, I think, a venture mindset almost in how you think about technology when you're in a new phase.
So OpenAI was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal today because of this great scoop my colleagues had about how Elon Musk was upset that there's this big data center in Abu Dhabi that OpenAI is involved in and he was left out of. And I think this project is really fascinating. It's part of this big Stargate AI infrastructure project that has made a lot of headlines. But in the announcement, it says that this is about building democratic AI. And so, I used to live in Abu Dhabi, wonderful place, wonderful people, not a democracy. So I'm curious, why would that be the first place you would build it? And what about this tension between your goals of democratic AI and working with countries that are not democracies?
Yeah. So the launch in the UAE is part of an initiative, actually, that we launched called OpenAI for Countries. And I think it's worth zooming out a little bit, actually, and talking about what is OpenAI for Countries. So one of the challenges that we have at OpenAI, and one of the interesting things we've seen in deploying AI, is the demand we see for the technology transcends kind of individual level demand or company level demand. It's actually, in a lot of cases, kind of national level demand. And I think it's because countries realize that AI is going to be a critical component of their future, of their competitiveness, of economic growth, of their ability to offer services to citizens, of the way people engage with computers. And there's a real fear that countries have of not wanting to be left behind. And so I think when we've kind of done these world tours, we do these kind of multi-week world tours, and one of the things that we kept hearing consistently was everyone kind of wants their own version of a Stargate, right? They want to make infrastructure investments in their country. They want to figure out what the jobs of the future are. They want to be able to offer AI to citizens in an unrestricted way. And so we at OpenAI now have the challenge of what does it mean to build that program and serve that level of use. So it's still pretty experimental. The UAE will be kind of the first experiment somewhat. They're a very technology forward and technology-led country. Obviously have a lot of awareness of how to build infrastructure. They've done an amazing job building infrastructure in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. And so it will be the first version of it. I hope, hopefully not the last. But it's going to be a learning process for us, which includes, by the way, how we administer AI and how we serve the models that we serve in ways that are consistent with OpenAI's principles and values. And we do believe that the core of it has to be about democratic AI. It has to be about making sure that the rails that AI and all the kind of surrounding technologies get built on are fundamentally, is fundamentally AI that upholds a set of democratic values.
So I used to work at a newspaper in Abu Dhabi, and they have these red lines where you can't say certain things, right? Like you can't criticize the royal family, for example. I assume when ChatGPT is rolled out to all the citizens of the UAE as part of that deal, which is kind of an amazing part of the deal, that those red lines will be part of ChatGPT in the UAE. Is that a safe assumption?
Well, we don't know. We've got to work on this together in partnership with the country, and somewhat in partnership with the U.S. government as well. I think what I can tell you is the things that really are important to us are, one is, we've got to be able to enable access to people. Two is we really take security very seriously. Three is we do take the model performance and behavior very seriously, and we really do want people to have as much of an unrestricted level of access as we can enable. And for us, it's really a learning experience. It's about how do we integrate it into the healthcare system, the education system. How do we help the country and the government offer services to citizens more efficiently than they do? So all those things are in scope, and we're just at the beginning of this, but more to come.
So ChatGPT has been growing super fast. I'll rattle off some stats here. 5 billion monthly visits last month, right? Up from 3.9 not long before that. 250 million weekly active users, or it's 500. 500, sorry, active users. And the enterprise business, which you've really been focusing on, had 2 million paying customers a few months ago. So that would suggest there's a lot of room to grow the enterprise part. So can you help us understand how much of OpenAI's current business is enterprise and how you see that moving over the next, say, 5 years?
Yeah, so enterprise obviously has a little bit of a different growth curve than consumer. Any person in the world can pick up ChatGPT and use it at their will, and certainly we've seen that. 500 million people using it every week has been kind of a crazy ride for us. Businesses obviously have a different need set, right? There's a different level of adoption, a different rate of growth. We are growing quite fast in the enterprise. So at current, actually, ChatGPT Enterprise and our kind of surrounding ChatGPT work products are at about 3 million seats, so up from 2 million in February. So quite a bit of growth, about 50% growth in 3 months. And the demand we see is off the charts. And I think what we're starting to see really are diverse and interesting examples of how ChatGPT and tools like it are starting to penetrate in the enterprise, in education, in healthcare. Some examples, we work very closely with CSU in California. We've deployed ChatGPT, or we'll deploy it to about 500,000 students in California. So it'll be kind of the first AI-powered university system, I think, in the country, which is super exciting. Used for everything from curriculum planning, lesson planning, to job preparation, to personalized learning. These are all things we're kind of experimenting with in partnership with CSU. All the way to examples like in healthcare, where we work very closely with Moderna, for example. Totally different use case, but you have the same technology that's capable of kind of powering both of these institutions. And so we're excited about it. I think the growth, we're trying to just keep up. We're still a smallish team, but I suspect if we continue to grow at that rate, there's something really special there.
And so how are you competing with these companies like Microsoft and Google that have this whole cloud business behind them, which you don't have? So what is the special sauce that you can offer that they can't?
We really live and breathe our models. There's something really valuable about being that close to the model training process, to the design. We obviously are probably the most active consumers of our own models. We try and build OpenAI on OpenAI as much as we can. And so therein, I think you develop familiarity with how these models work, kind of what are the things they're really good at, what are the things they're not good at. It's very easy when they don't work to call support, because it's like the guy sitting next to you, and to basically kind of do that in a very iterative way. And that really is, I think, the core of it, right? It's AI is a completely new paradigm of product building. How the model gets integrated into the product, into the UX, the UI, all of those things take a tremendous amount of care and a tremendous amount of thought that I think it just is, it's so important to be deeply integrated, tightly integrated with the research. And I think that's kind of what makes OpenAI unique, is we really do take that vantage point.
So I think OpenAI has been pretty open about the fact that $200 price point for the consumer product, the sort of top-of-the-line Cadillac, is not a winner, right? You lose money at that $200 price point.
We're doing better now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if there is any updates, that's interesting. And also, what kind of price points can we think about going forward?
Yeah, well, people thought we were crazy when we introduced a $200 price point. So if anyone here has spent time in consumer technology, especially consumer subscriptions, $20 is the magic number. It's you cannot go above $20 and expect people to pay for something. Typically, people start there and actually try and go down. And everyone asked, by the way, how did you guys even come up with $20 as the price point? The answer is Sam and I were I don't know, pick a number, 20 sounds good. Okay, let's do it. And that was kind of how we came up with 200 as well. And the reason, by the way, that we did that, again, very much in the spirit of being experimental, was we saw, if you look at the distribution of use of ChatGPT users, it is highly, there's an extreme power law at work. So if you look at the far right side of that graph, there's a handful of people that use ChatGPT at levels that far exceed what the kind of median or average is in the rest of the user base. And so there are these like insane power users that like just hammer the thing all day. And so we were like, well, I don't know, like what is the product for them? And we have real costs when we serve these models. And so we're like, I don't know, like if we want to serve them, like we probably have to charge something like $200 a month. And we kind of like all stared at each other around the room and we're like, should we just launch $200 a month? And we did, and now it's growing very quickly.
Any other prices that we can expect?
2,000.
Perfect.
You didn't hear that from me.
Okay, so Sam Altman has said that AGI is coming in the second Trump administration. Are you still on track for that?
Yeah, I mean, look, AGI is a definitionally challenging thing. The joke is like if you ask 5 researchers at OpenAI what AGI is, you get 7 answers. And so something that feels like AGI, or at least approximates what would be a commonly understood definition of AGI, I think it is possible that in the next 4 years we do approximate something like that. And it's a testament to how fast things are moving and also the cycle we're in right now. And so it's worth spending maybe a second on that is the reasoning models that we're building today are improving at a rate that's dramatically faster than the old paradigm of models. So the GPT series of models that you're probably familiar with, GPT-3, GPT-4, we used to cycle time on those between generations at, call it 12 to 18 months. There are these big pre-training efforts that kind of take time and investment. The O series of models, that's a much more condensed period of innovation. And so for that, it's probably order of months, not years. And so the rate of change and the ability for these models to generalize, learn in context, and really reason about how to solve hard problems, use tools to do it, it's not yet, I think, a well understood thing. People still kind of use these models very much like chatbots. They're just Oracle systems. But once you kind of enter this more agentic phase of AI, and with the rate of improvement we're seeing in the models, I think you do stand to kind of see this fairly steep takeoff in capability.
And if I'm a CIO trying to plan for this, how do I plan for a post-AGI future? Because I have to plan more than 5 years out.
Yeah. That's the hardest part of our job. We partner closely with enterprises, and I think our disposition when we do that is very much not, hey, we sell you a service. It's, hey, how do you kind of join the journey with us? How do you get on the train with us? Because the thing that we're talking about a year from now is not going to be the thing we're talking about today. And then 2 years from now is not going to be the thing from a year prior. And so it is this fluency that we have to build with the customers that we work with. And we spend a lot of time and care trying to do that and establish that baseline. We work, for example, very closely with Morgan Stanley. We've worked with them for a few years. And for a big legacy financial institution, they're actually remarkably sophisticated in their use of AI. But it took them kind of 2 years to establish that baseline. And so that's a lot of the guidance that we give to enterprises is like, it's not a bad time to just at least start the investment process. Like, you just have to start to build fluency. You've got to build muscle memory in the organization. You've got to just build a familiarity with the rate of change because it's very steep. Unlike past technological revolutions, it's something that is going to change over time. Cloud computing hasn't changed that much in the last few years. Mobile phones haven't changed that much in the last few years. This is something that will be categorically different in a few years. And so it's the hard part, but it's also the fun part.
So talking about this moment of AGI, we've all reported that in your partnership with Microsoft, key partner, there's this provision where basically Microsoft is not going to get access to your tech after you declare AGI. Do you imagine some future where they will be able to participate financially or as a business in a post-AGI OpenAI technology, given what early and important partners they were?
Yeah, well, I would say, look, we tend to not discuss, terms of our engagements with partners. 2 things, though. One is they're a meaningful owner in OpenAI. And so regardless, they're along for the ride. And they've been an amazing supporter of the company as an investor and as a partner. And I suspect that will continue. The partnership will evolve, but I expect the substance of what we really set up to succeed 5 years ago will continue. The second thing I'll say is we've got to kind of take a whole of company approach and somewhat kind of a whole of ecosystem approach to making AGI work. One of the things we didn't appreciate when we set up OpenAI really early on is just how externalized the process of building OpenAI and AGI is going to be. We kind of thought we could like go off in a lab and like, you know, if we like thought hard enough and focused hard enough and had enough computers, like we would kind of like go invent the thing and then like wake up one day and be like, here you go, everyone, like we have AGI. And the reality has been very different. It's been this highly iterative, highly collaborative approach to building that takes an understanding of what do users care about, what do businesses care about, how do people engage with these systems, what are they really good at, what are they not good at, right? How do we actually hill climb on those problems? And so, you know, I suspect that's not going to change. And Microsoft's been an amazing partner in helping increase that exposure to the world and helping us improve the models given what they understand about their customers. So it's a solid foundation for that. And I suspect, you know, many years to come of great partnership.
Okay. You've led a lot of these deals with publishers, including, you know, one of the deals that our paper and our company has with OpenAI. How does OpenAI think about how to value the content the publishers have, both for training and for inference? And how do you decide what you need to license and what you don't?
Yeah, so we have now a whole handful of partnerships with different publishers and different news and media organizations. Those have been kind of amazing partnerships in that, you know, I think news and information was really one of the first areas that AI touched, right? It was, you know, all of a sudden you've got these systems that have kind of the world's accumulated knowledge stored somewhere in their mathematical weights. And people kind of use them differently, right? It's like you have this kind of infinite learning machine. And inevitably, that kind of touches external content, right? It's like you want to be able to say, okay, I want to learn about what the tariffs are, right? I want to be able to learn about what's going on in, you know, in Asia, right? I want to learn why the, you know, what's going on in South America, right, at this exact moment. And so part of the challenge we had early on was our models have a cutoff date, right? We train them, and you know, once they're done training for the most part. And so their knowledge only goes up to a certain point. And so we started doing these deals basically to kind of extend the model's knowledge into current events, into you know, news and more kind of current media. But also because it gives the models color. It gives them, you know, perspective that they don't have. They're averages of human preference. And so, but you as a reporter may have a different or unique vantage point on something that actually supplements, you know, someone's understanding of a topic. And we want to be able to enable that experience because these models are also really good at directing people to that content. And that's what we do in practice today in search. I think the misconception somewhat was that we were doing these deals as training deals. We were not actually really explicitly doing these deals as training deals. I think if you added up all the content in the world from all of the publishers and kind of put it in a bucket and handed it to OpenAI and said, here you go, train on this, it would amount to, you know, something like less than 1.1% of the total content that we need to train a model like GPT-4, let alone GPT-5 or anything better. So it's not a meaningful source of training data for us. I think what is really meaningful is it's a source of reference information. It's a source of, it's a connection point to the external world, and you know, I think that's an important thing to have.
Do you ever imagine doing it with local publications?
We do work very closely with local publications. So we have a variety of efforts that are really actually meant to support local publishers, because that's in some sense kind of the hardest information to find. You know, if I live in Topeka, Kansas, like what's going on in Topeka is kind of as relevant as anything else, right? And one of the things we hear often as a use case is people saying like, oh, I want to plan my weekend. You know, I've got a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I want to give them activities to do over the weekend. And it's actually important to know kind of what's going on in your community and whatnot. So even purely for the value of our users, that type of engagement is critical. And we're working with Axios and a few others on initiatives meant to actually help use AI to revitalize a lot of the local news industries that today are kind of facing some structural difficulty.
So we've heard that you've been out in Hollywood a lot, talking to a lot of folks, but there haven't been many deals out of Hollywood. Why not?
So a lot of what we do is engagement, right? I think, you know, to start any conversation with AI is kind of it starts with an education process. Like, this stuff's all really new. There's a baseline level of trust and understanding that you have to build with partners before you engage, just as to what it is that you're doing. Like, you know, what is it you're building? Who are we as OpenAI? What do we stand for? And I think with a lot of the things that kind of touch Hollywood, so video modeling, you know, et cetera, there are things that are still kind of in their infancy as technologies. We released a model called Sora, is a generative video model, was the first really kind of high quality generative video model to come out. And we really released the first version as kind of a research preview. You can use it, you can access it today, and people can play with it, but it's not meant for production level content. It's not, in my opinion, good enough for that yet. So will it get better? Yeah, of course. But it's just starting a dialogue and starting a process of understanding how are people wanting to use these tools, how do the creative communities think about these tools. For the most part, we've actually been able to, I think, enhance the creative workflow. We work very closely with a lot of filmmakers who've started trying to use Sora to make films. They all went from kind of skeptics at first, I think, to at the end kind of saying there's no way I would ever make a film without actually wanting this thing sitting by my side. So that's valuable learning for us, and that's kind of the phase we're in.
So we talk a little bit about agents. You've been releasing some agents, this Operator one, which is a research preview. And we all know what it means when OpenAI releases a research preview, right? A low-key research preview. Yeah. That's what ChatGPT was.
Never worked out for us.
But I'm curious, what has the usage been and uptake, and what are people really using them for? How much usage are you seeing of the agents, both for coding and the other stuff?
Yeah, so agents is a little all over the map. So Operator specifically, very early. And for those of you who don't know, Operator is a system that basically allows an AI to use a computer the way that like a person would use a computer. So it can click around. It's got like a mouse and a keyboard. It can, move around, control applications, control the web, and so on. It is really early for that type of agent, at least. But we think it's going to be a critical part of the future. And the right way to kind of roughly, in my opinion, think about agents is you're going from an AI system that has what I would call kind of wide and diverse factual knowledge to AI systems that have wide and diverse ability to reason. So they can think really hard about a problem and actually come up with, in some sense, new ideas or new knowledge about a topic, and also can think about how to solve a problem. So critically, in their chain of thought, you can actually see how they start to map out a strategy to go actually execute a task. That's all well and good, but it's all kind of like, it's all words basically until you actually let the systems go off and use tools to do the thing. So that's kind of the state we're in right now. It's kind of the phase we're in now, is this transition from what would be kind of purely chatbots and reasoning models into what really are more agentic AI systems that can use tools, solve problems, execute tasks, write code, control computers, and basically string all these capabilities together end to end to actually solve fairly complex problems.
So you were part of the deal to buy part of Jony Ive's, or to buy the rest of Jony Ive's company, IO, and bring them aboard OpenAI. And Jony Ive, of course, the famous designer who designed all these beautiful Apple products. It seems, I was just at the Apple store yesterday getting a new iPhone, and the salesman was so excited he like preloaded the new action button with ChatGPT. But it's very clear that there still is a button, right? You are still basically at Apple's mercy. And I'm curious if the future of OpenAI is going to be one where you will need to have a direct relationship with your customer, not through some other tech company, but direct. Is that necessary for success?
Well, what I would say is I think there's like an incredible opportunity to build like an entirely new class of devices. And I think every time you kind of get a change in the underlying computing platform, you tend to get kind of a corresponding change in the types of devices people use to engage with that platform. So when we kind of originally had the mainframe, but the PC was invented, turned into mobile phones, on-prem systems, big monolithic cloud, on-prem systems turned into cloud systems, and distributed architectures. Same thing with AI. You've got an entirely new substrate that really lets you do things that you couldn't do with the more traditional kind of computing methods of years past. And so we think that there is going to be a kind of a corresponding set of devices that gets built. I think for us, what it represents is actually an interesting challenge of how do you now start to build AI that really is truly personal. ChatGPT is great, right? But it's to your point, it's just an app on your phone. Like you have to kind of go in and you've got to kind of input something. There's a lot of inertia to kind of be able to use it and get value from it. But so much of like the way that we actually engage with people and do things happens in the real world, right? It happens in places that don't involve us necessarily just staring at a screen. And so I think a lot of the inspiration for the types of things that we feel like we can build will be the types of systems that are more ambient, right? They're more, and in some sense almost feel more personal. They detach you a little bit from having to always be looking at a screen. I think there's a place for a phone, and I think there's a place for apps and whatnot. But the way that we kind of look at the problem statement is very much an emphasis on personal computing and how we kind of build this ambient computing layer. And it's interesting from an AI research perspective too, because there's a lot that we have to do to develop models to succeed in that environment. Like, the real world is super messy. And so how do you have models that kind of run this parallel track, for example, of like social reasoning? How do they know who I'm talking to? Like, how do they know our relationship? Maybe I want to say things to you that I wouldn't want to say to someone else, right? Or maybe there's, if I'm present with family members, the tone of engagement is going to be different than if I'm with colleagues. All that stuff is like actually part of the intelligence spectrum. And I think you have to kind of have a device that is going to be acknowledging of the fact that we are going to want to understand that better.
So, do you know what the device is?
I have no idea.
There's nothing we could say to squeeze it out of you?
Someone asked me earlier if it was an orb.
It seems kind of like maybe an Alexa, that from what we know so far. Close?
No comment, but and this is exploratory. I mean, it is truly experimental. It's truly kind of cutting edge in that sense. And I think there's going to be a lot of versions of it that we go through before we feel good about it.
Okay. One last thing, so we don't have much time left, but I want to end on ROI. I know, but I feel like this is really where the rubber hits. It's the Wall Street Journal. This is where the rubber hits the road. So I've been constantly searching for examples of productivity gains by people using AI. And I was asking ChatGPT today, and it was like, oh, here's NVIDIA's stock price. I'm like, no, I don't want people paying for AI. I want people using it and getting productivity gains out the back end. So what are some of the best examples, and how do people measure the ROI of these things that you're trying to sell them?
Yeah. This is actually one of the hardest things that we have to deal with, is AI being kind of this enabling layer of technology, right? It's actually, everyone uses it a little differently. And in some sense, you get varying level of acceleration. So you get 2% here, 10% here, 2x there, and it's very spiky. So just to give you maybe some data points that might help contextualize it, most startups now, I think, if you kind of flew to San Francisco and took a poll, would say that the majority of code they're writing is actually written either with, in partnership with, or completely by AIs. That is an amazing thing, right? AI is amazingly good at coding, and so the types of productivity gains you get, and these are all it's kind of all anecdata, so it's all self-reported, but would be probably software engineers saying something between a 50% speed up and a 2x speed up in their kind of total output, and that number is only going up. You see similar things kind of ancillary to that. So things like data science, quantitative fields like trading, where people have to process a lot of information quickly, a lot of the same benefit. Interestingly, actually, creativity also is an amazingly kind of powerful area for AI. So the way that creatives are using the systems to improve their rate of iteration, kind of use it as an idea partner, as a thought generation partner, has been an accelerant to that field. And then there are others where I think the more kind of agentic version of AI is going to have to exist before you see the real speed up. You're going to need systems that can manage across a lot of other pieces of software, a lot of data, a lot of context, and then be able to use tools to kind of use all that effectively to solve problems. So it's varied, it's diverse. We get asked all the time for, give me the ROI case. And usually what I say is, do you use ChatGPT yourself? And of course the answer is yes. And I always say, well, it's what's your personal story, and just go and understand that across your team, find the power users, distill what they're kind of using it for across your functions, and try and kind of tell that story as qualitatively as you can.